Hey there, it's the Productize podcast. My name is Brian Castle. Thanks, as always, for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And if you would, head over to iTunes, give it a 5-star rating. I'd really appreciate that too. That's how more folks like you and me can connect and get in on this podcast and these conversations. Speaking of these conversations, got a good one with you today, talking to Joe Howard. He's the founder of WP Buffs. That is a WordPress maintenance as a service, productized service, has seen really awesome growth and traction from starting in around 15 or 16 into 2018, just month over month growth. We talked about his journey from working as a salary employee even through the launch of WP Buffs, and then going full time on it, and some how he's been able to scale the team with freelancers and some lessons learned there, talking about team culture, building a remote team culture around a productized service, structuring the productized offering, the pricing and what goes into that, and segmenting different customers. We talked about marketing. We touched all the bases. So yeah, again, it's a good one. I'm really impressed with what he's been doing with WP Buffs. It's a highly systematized, it's a productized service, and it's really well done. I highly recommend you even check it out if you're running a WordPress site and you need help with it. I mean, he's not paying me to do this or anything, but yeah, I just think it's really well executed. So anyway, here you go. Here's that conversation with Joe Howard from WP Buffs. Oh, and just one more quick note. My apologies that the audio quality on Joe's end is not as ideal as I would like it to be. I know he was traveling. I think he's out in Serbia when we recorded this. Hopefully we'll clean it up for you, but yeah, hopefully you can hear it okay. Anyway, here you go. Here's that conversation with Joe Howard from WP Buffs. Enjoy. All right, Joe Howard, how's it going?
I'm doing really well, Brian. How are you?
Doing good. And yeah, it's great to connect with you. You and I just met a couple of weeks back at MicroConf in Vegas. Really cool to kind of catch up with you there and hear what you're up to with WP Buffs. We're going to get into all that today. I know. So, I mean, you're based in the US, but you're traveling in Europe right now, right?
I am at my hotel in Belgrade, Serbia right now. I'm a WordPress guy, so doing WordCamp Europe this upcoming weekend, but we'll be here for the few days before, kind of hanging out with a few of the European-based people I work with. So yeah, pretty cool.
Very nice. Yeah, actually, I noticed in one of your blog posts here how you've actually made going to WordCamps and conferences, part of your strategy for getting WP Buffs out there. I'd love to kind of get into that. But, before we jump ahead, why don't you give us an idea, what is WP Buffs? How do you explain it to folks?
Yeah, for sure. So I am the head buff at WP Buffs. In simple terms, we fully manage WordPress websites. So we work with entrepreneurs, small businesses, help them handle security, website speed, updates, ongoing edits, anything they really need to help them manage WordPress. And then we also work with digital agencies, a few hosting and plugin companies, some design and marketing firms through our white label program. So we work with our white label partners so that they can sell our care plans to their clients as well. So that's a big growing part of the business too.
Yeah, very cool. I definitely want to get into that. I think the whole white label thing is interesting, and I've had a lot of requests for it. We do a little bit of that in my business, but yeah, it sounds like it's a pretty essential part of what you're doing there. But basically what WP Buffs, my understanding, as you just explained, is it's all about WordPress maintenance. So correct me if I'm wrong, but that's basically all the little updates and all the little maintenance tasks that happen after you've had a WordPress site designed or redesigned. Like, do you guys get into the actual initial build, design, and redesign of sites, or you'll only take on sites after they're basically launched?
Yeah, we're really focusing on the after launch ongoing support of websites. When I started the business, I was a freelancer building WordPress websites, and it's just something that so many people do. I was kind of having trouble differentiating myself. And so I thought maybe instead of building websites, because since so many people are already building websites, there may be a space just to do ongoing support. Since it's not just the building of the website people need help with, it's also the updates, security, website speed, edits, all of the above. So yeah, we actually focus more specifically on ongoing care as opposed to building out new websites, for sure.
Yeah, very cool. So yeah, I mean, like, why don't we, before we go back, here we're doing this call in the middle of 2018. I know that WP Buffs is just a couple of years in at this point, but can you give us any sort of sense of size, whether it's revenue, number of customers, your team size, any of that?
Yeah, sure. So we have 9 people working for WP Buffs. About half of those people are full time. Half of those people are part time people who are working towards full time. In terms of revenue, we've kind of been growing month over month since the business started. We've been profitable since day one, which has been nice. But it has been a bootstrap business, so we didn't raise any funding. It was kind of self-funded through the Joe Howard bank account. But we did hit a nice milestone last month. We did over 30K last month, so that was a nice milestone that we hit. So yeah, at about 9 people and doing 30K, 25 to 30K in monthly revenue, and hoping that will all increase as the months go on.
Beautiful. And it looks like all of your pricing plans, these are recurring pricing plans, ranging to pretty low prices like 40 to 120 bucks a month. And then it looks like some higher tier like retainer plans as well.
Yeah, exactly. So like I kind of mentioned before, when I was building websites, I was kind of having trouble differentiating myself in the business. And I was really looking for a different business model, one that would allow me to focus more on increasing monthly revenue. And so that's kind of why I decided to go more in the direction of this productized service. Our customers pay every month and they get a part-time CTO to work on their WordPress site. And that made things much easier in terms of coming from kind of a cash flow perspective. Now the things I have to worry about are not as much, if I've just finished building a website, I got to look for a new client. That was always kind of a pain in the butt, but now the things I'm focusing on are more, how do I increase lifetime value of our customers? How do I decrease the churn rate? So it really is more SaaS pricing as well as SaaS business model. And that's worked out way better than the traditional kind of WordPress consulting model that people use just to kind of build websites.
I can imagine. And you're right. I mean, I come from that background as well. I used to be a freelance WordPress designer, developer, and you're right. I mean, it's kind of like a race to the bottom, or it's just all over the map. Like there are just so many generalist website designers who basically use WordPress, and it is very difficult to differentiate. And that's why I love the productized service model. But so I'm kind of curious, like just kind of looking through your pricing page and kind of the breakdown of your services, like how do you differentiate between custom work, or do you offer, custom, like major custom work to their website? Like, do you have any sort of maximum complexity or hours that you'll take on for a task before you say that's a larger project that will maybe refer to someone else? How does that work?
So we kind of separate it into 2 different categories that we really separate, I guess, what defines a custom website. This is a tough thing to define, especially when it comes to WordPress, because obviously WordPress is open source technology. Every WordPress website, no matter how well it's put together, is going to be kind of zombified. Like all the pieces have to work together, all the plugins, all the theme, the core files, all has to work together in the end. And so the way we really differentiate what makes a custom site is anything that's had pretty significant changes in terms of PHP coding. So anything that involves adjustments from the dashboard, as well as HTML and CSS edits, we kind of cover and is fully covered by our care plans and by the edits in those care plans. For us, adjusting CSS and HTML is really as easy as adjusting content. So we didn't want to add that to kind of a custom plan. But anything that's really been fully customized in terms of some of that advanced coding language like PHP is going to fall under that kind of custom code plan.
So like if they've had like a custom plugin built just for their site, or like custom functionality that's been implemented, and for you guys to maintain that, it requires the higher priced custom plans, basically.
Yeah, correct. And the idea there is just that, if you're buying a plugin from a valid source online, then you're able to fall back on that development team to support that plugin, to support the updates, to support the maintenance. Of a custom plugin, it requires more resources on our end to take care of a website like that. And obviously, if that website has advanced functionality, if it's a WooCommerce site or a membership site, people need to log in or people need to check out and get payment information, that site's got to be up and running 24/7, and any downtime can really damage a site like that. So yeah, anything that's been customized like that, especially when it has advanced functionality, is just going to be required to be on those higher level plans to make sure that we have the resources to manage it as best we can.
Yeah. And I'm also curious about like the other end, like the easier end of maintaining a website. Like, do you guys, I know that you do like routine plugin updates and theme updates and like, like maintaining the functionality of a website, but what if a client just wants like a photo replaced or some content updated or some like a word, like a typo fixed? Like, do you guys actually go into the content and update, or like, would you do things like, hey, here's a Google Doc, can you set this up as a WordPress post? Like, do you do stuff like that or no?
Yeah, we do. So that'd be fully covered by the ongoing edits that are included in some of our care plans. So our goal is really to remove all headaches from WordPress users. So anything, especially when it's content and image changes, that's something that's pretty easy for our team and something that we would include and would be fully covered by our plans without having to kind of dive into any hourly custom dev or anything like that.
Yeah, very nice. So we talked a little bit offline about how you've been growing the team a little bit. And you mentioned there are 9 folks on your team now. Like, what are the roles that make up your team? Is it mostly web developers? Like, what does that look like?
So that's right. The team is 9 people right now. We're spread out across 5 different time zones. Everybody works remotely. So that in itself is an adventure, as I know you know, having some remote support as well. The makeup of the team is there are 3 of us that work more on kind of programmatic, strategic stuff at WP Buffs. And then the other 6 are more technical, working on not only client work, but internal technical work we need done. So I would say 6 of us are pretty highly skilled developers. And the others have technical skill too. I guess myself not included. I'm not very technical. But the others are working on more programmatic stuff for WP Buffs. So like we just did a big push to make sure we were GDPR compliant, as have many people across the WordPress space and technology space in general. So Nick was the person responsible for that. So we've got kind of operations people and technical people.
Very nice. All right, so let's kind of go back. Before you even started WP Buffs, what were you doing?
So I've worked a few different jobs before starting WP Buffs. A lot of people don't know that I was a high school math teacher for a few years after I graduated from college. So yeah, I've got a little education experience as well. Taught high school math for a couple of years in DC public schools. And then I transitioned away from that and joined a couple of digital marketing startups.
Well, what happened? I'm curious. So what happened there? Why'd you leave public schools? And I know that there's like was it public schools and you were going for like tenure or anything like that?
No, it wasn't really like that. So I did a teaching program. It was a DC Teaching Fellows. It's a very similar program to like a Teach for America. You do some summer training and then you're in the classroom. I was scheduled to, my kind of a minimum term was 2 years, and I did my 2 years and then decided to transition to something else. I really, honestly, still miss working with kids. I wish I had more of an opportunity to do that. But the DC Public Schools is a tough place to teach. I got shingles a couple times from the stress. It was just a very stressful environment, and I didn't think it was something that was extremely healthy for me. And I always told myself I wasn't giving 100% to the cause, then it was time to step away anyway. But that being said, I was really looking I really enjoyed the challenge.
Actually, just real quick, I'm also curious, like when you were even younger, was teaching something that you were always going, like that you saw yourself doing, or did you ever expect to go out on your own and own your own business like this?
I always kind of had a little bit of entrepreneurial spirit, I think, but I think it took me a long time to find it. So I decided I wanted to teach when I was in college. I found kind of education courses and really started to really enjoy the work and working in schools. But I think I always kind of brought up in the sense that I guess I was never really like pushed into entrepreneurship. I was always kind of had this feeling like I was supposed to go this traditional route. I was supposed to do it in high school and then go to college and spend 4 years there, again, get good grades and go get a good job. And that was kind of the traditional path I think I always felt like I was supposed to go on. And then after working a few different jobs, I was a math teacher. Then I worked at a couple digital marketing startups. I did some government consulting as well. And I think I figured out that I really needed more ownership over my work and more freedom to do what I thought was right and make decisions based on that, as opposed to just something that someone told me I needed to do. And so I think that's what kind of drew me more towards running my own business and trying to start something myself.
Well, I'm sure I'm not the only one who can relate to that.
Yeah.
So when did like the web come into play for you, and like, creating websites, WordPress? When did you get introduced to all that?
So that was in my first kind of digital marketing startup that I worked at. So after I finished teaching, I enjoyed the challenge, really enjoyed the challenge of it, but I felt like I didn't have the right team around me to be successful as a teacher. And so I was really looking for something where I had the opportunity to still take on something challenging, but I wanted to be able to pick my team. I thought that would be something that would be able to lead me to success. So I was looking around at positions and found a job as a first employee at a digital marketing startup and kind of went from there. So most of my, well, I guess not most, but all of my marketing skills are really self-taught through taking on clients, learning, experimenting, having a few failures here and there, and really just kind of figuring things out.
So you just like basically jumped over to a digital marketing firm, like, and you come from a background in teaching, so they were kind of open to someone who's just eager to learn on the job, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, honestly, when I was interviewing for this position, they knew I didn't have any real experience doing any of the, technical work that we'd be doing. But when they looked at my resume and saw, man, like you've taught in DC public schools for a couple of years, like that sounds like one of the hardest jobs ever. Like if you can do that, like this should be a piece of cake.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, it was just in terms of, like I've never done anything that was as hard as teaching like that. But in terms of some of the skill sets, I definitely had to learn quick and be on my feet. But it was definitely something that I was able to tackle kind of one day at a time.
Yeah. Cool. So where'd you go from there? Like when did you kind of make the leap into going out on your own, like, freelancing or doing your own client work?
So I kind of transitioned from working at these startups to doing some I got drawn in the area of user experience. So I really enjoyed kind of putting websites together, both building websites and just figuring out how they can work together to give the user the best possible experience. So I transitioned into doing some of that work as a government consultant. So I was helping kind of rebuild old government systems that hadn't been updated since the 90s, kind of helping to relaunch them in terms of helping them improve the user experience. And kind of while I was doing that, I was still kind of keeping my WordPress chops fresh. I was doing some freelancing on the side, kind of working with clients one-on-one, and also running some SEO campaigns, helping out some clients with their inbound marketing.
Yeah, well, just real quick, just to touch on the government consulting piece.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone thinks of like these government websites and portals as just having like horrible user experience. Like we've all seen that, but
absolutely.
I mean, that's not the case for every government site or whatever, but the sheer number of people who have to use these systems is insane compared to, most web projects in the private sector. I mean, an old friend and colleague of mine was pretty heavily involved in the design and build of healthcare.gov and just the insane challenges of managing a site that has to be basically used by hundreds of millions of people is insane from a user experience standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And the interesting part about doing this work for government clients was that because there's so many people using so many of these systems, I mean, like one of my clients was the Department of Defense, and working on some of their main employee portals. So many people use these portals every day. The user experience makes a huge difference in terms of the overall happiness of someone's day, across tens of thousands of people. And if you're really just talking about sheer efficiency, how many hours it takes someone to accomplish a task, if it takes tens of thousands of people, an hour to do something instead of 10 minutes, that's a lot of taxpayer money going down the drain because people are just using inefficient systems that they don't like using. So that's what kind of drew me to it in the first place. The work itself was very political and very, there was a lot of yellow and red tape I had to kind of claw through to do things. So it wasn't exactly it wasn't the right fit for me because as I found out running WP buffs, I'm very much kind of a shoot from the hip individual. I like to make decisions fast and kind of see how things pan out and then, iterate on the fly. And that's kind of how I work better. So that, the slow moving wasn't as good for me.
Yeah. Especially when you're owning your own thing and it's so small compared to, working for these huge organizations. I mean, A, you have to move fast, but then B, I mean, in my experience, like I get extremely impatient now. Like when anything takes longer than I want it to take, if something's out of my control, I'm working with a third party or something and they're like, yeah, we'll get it back to you like by next week. I'm like, no, I need this done today so I can cross it off my checklist,
Yeah, dude, tell me about it. I mean, I think that's a huge advantage of a lot of small companies too, the ability to make decisions fast and just move quickly. I think a lot of companies as they get bigger, the communication becomes more difficult and the decision making becomes more difficult when it doesn't always have to. So that's one thing I'm always trying to be cognizant of as we grow. Things changed a lot when we went from, 5 people to 9 people. It's just a lot more communication, really trying to give everyone the ability to make decisions on the fly, and so that we can keep moving fast. And I'm sure we'll have to continue to make changes to the business as we continue to bring on more people. I just know that the jump between 10 people and 25 people is just massive, massive changes in just how the business works. So I'm sure we'll have to tackle that as it comes as well. But I guess good problems to have.
Yeah, as we were just talking about offline, it's actually good timing that we're having this conversation now. I mean, I just wrote an article on my blog about the growth of scaling a team, mostly with freelancers, from me and a couple of people up to a team of like close to 30 at this point. And you're right, like there are all these different changes in structure and organization that need to happen to get past certain milestones there. But we're getting a little bit ahead, or we're definitely going to dive into that stuff in just a minute. I'm curious about that transition okay, like you left the consulting gigs, the government work, the digital agency and stuff. Now you're on your own. You're doing basically generalist WordPress, like design development work, like client work. Is that what you're doing for a little while there?
So I was actually doing some freelance work on the side of government consulting, but I actually also started WP Buffs on the side of government consulting as well.
Oh, okay. So you went like right into like launching this as a business before you were doing like other stuff.
Correct. Although it was kind of a side business. I was kind of working 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. I'm doing government work, and then outside of that work, I was kind of building WP Buffs and honestly doing like a kind of a proof of concept, seeing if it would be a viable business idea, and then seeing if I could grow it to the point of, okay, do I need to make a decision now about going full time on this, or do I want to continue just making a steady paycheck? And so.
Yeah, so your decision to go full time was to like actually leave a full time salary position. It wasn't to like phase down. Like you didn't become a full time freelancer first and then phase down that general consulting work, right?
That's correct. So leaving is one way you could put it. So 70% of my department was cut from my company after we lost a few large contracts. So I had actually planned to quit right after my wedding last year, and I was let go about 2 months earlier than that. So technically, I didn't choose to leave, but I was within the last couple months of my stint there, and I had plans to go full time on WP Buffs. And it had gotten to the point where financially it made sense to keep working on WP Buffs full time. And now, I guess a little more than a year later, it is definitely the right decision.
I really like that. I guess you might call it like a model, if you will, for people who are looking to transition into building a scalable business, like a productized service business. Because I get this question a lot from folks who are, they look at the path that I took, which was I was basically a full-time freelancer for years, doing WordPress sites and whatnot for several years before I even started my like what was Restaurant Engine and then now into Audience Ops. Like I went the path, which I think more people do, which is doing general freelance consulting work, start up a more scalable business kind of on the side of that. And then gradually, for me, it was a couple of years of gradual ramping down of the generalist consulting and then started to focus more on the main business or the brand that I'm trying to launch. In your case, you had the full-time job. And I get this question a lot from folks who are like, I'm thinking about leaving my job. Like I've been looking at the productized service model. But do I need to be a freelancer first before I can get into productized services, or can I launch one on the side of a full-time job? And I do advise I actually like that model better of having the steady paycheck while you're getting that early traction.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think there are a lot of advantages to that model. I mean, one of the nice advantages for me was that the government work was pretty cushy. I was making a pretty nice paycheck there. So I was able to, take 10, 20% of the paycheck and kind of put it towards WP Buffs and say, let's see how I can use this money to like experiment and see how I can use this money to our best advantage. And as bootstrapping a company is difficult. So every dime really counts at the beginning. And I think even more than that, the ability to have the comfort of a 9 to 5, with healthcare coverage and dental coverage and a steady paycheck, while slowly experimenting to see if this is even a realistic business model, because that's where a lot of people, I think, go wrong. They want to start a business. It sounds exciting, but I mean, the proof of concept is one of the biggest pieces of it, and creating an MVP and getting things rolling and getting something that's really scalable in place is really important. So I think that doing that on the side of a full-time job, although it took many more hours a week because I was working a lot, it was much less risky than, at least I think, than just, quitting and then moving into like proof of concept and freelancing. To me, it was definitely the move.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, because I was full-time employed at an agency before I became a freelancer. And I remember how comforting it was for me to know, and that was like an in-house agency in New York City. I remember how comforting it was for me to know that like when I'm physically in the office, I'm at work. That's like 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 or whatever. And then when I leave the office and I'm on my way home, or whether it's at night or on the weekend or whatever, it was a total freedom, a total disconnection from my salary work. And I'm totally free to work on whatever on those. I mean, yeah, it's after hours and I got to hustle a little bit to do side projects, but I didn't have that mental weight of my work projects getting in the way. Whereas in the years that followed, when I was a freelancer, I was basically paying my bills with freelance work. But when I'm trying to start a business like Restaurant Engine or Audience Ops, like I still need to hustle and think about marketing my, like getting the consulting work and dealing with that stuff at all hours of the day and weekends and stuff. And so there's that mixture of like, the mental weight just kind of overlaps everything and it makes it a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. I think that anybody who's listening now who is kind of thinking these same thoughts and has these same questions, I really believe that there's no easy way to do any of this. So although, working a full-time job while starting WP Buffs on the side is what I did, and while going into freelancing and then starting your business is what you did, everything comes with pros and cons and everything comes hard. I mean, and nothing really comes easy. So there's going to be some aspect of you're just going to have to like work a lot of hours and like probably mess some stuff up, fail a few times and like figure it out. There's no like, people always think of like the Instagram story, it's like, oh, like in a year we got to 15 employees and like sold the company for $1 billion. Like, yes, technically that happened, but that's very clearly the exception, not the rule.
Yeah. I remember seeing that guy at a conference, like it must have been like 2009 or something like that. And
oh yeah,
I forget. I think this was like just before the acquisition from Facebook. But he was just talking about like, oh, we just have this like insane growth. And just like the whole talk to me was like, look at these crazy growth numbers. Like, I don't know. It just happened. Like we put it out there. We had millions of users and I'm like, okay, great. Like, how do I use that? I don't know what to do with that. So anyway,
yeah, it's like, this isn't applicable to me at all or
right.
anybody here.
Exactly. Anyway, so yeah, let's get into WP Buffs a little bit. Like, you talked about how it is difficult to get that early traction and proof of concept. And so what were your very first steps to getting, WPBuffs.com launched and getting those very first customers and even the whole concept behind it of the model and your pricing, and what were your first steps to get all that together?
So the concept really came about the fact that I was doing some freelance work on the side, but I wasn't able to find, I found that like building websites wasn't as scalable a process as I wanted. So I was looking for just a different business model. I wanted a business model that worked for me, as well as something that combined my skills with WordPress and my knowledge that I already had in the WordPress space. So I thought, instead of building websites, let's try managing them, because I can kind of package it into these plans and kind of use a more SaaS-based business model. So I did a little competitive research, found a few other companies out there that were doing it. And kind of the most important piece there is I saw actually a lot of other companies out there doing a similar model, but I found that probably 80 to 90% of those companies, just landing on their website and kind of getting a feel for their business, I didn't feel like they were doing a very good job with the business. And for about 90, maybe 99% of those people, I felt like the way they were marketing themselves via their website was subpar. So I felt like there was clearly a market for this because people were doing it and building businesses around it, but I also felt like there was room to win in the space. So I thought it was kind of a perfect place for me.
What was the differentiator that you had in mind? Like, you're looking at these other competitors. I mean, WordPress in general is just a competitive space because it is such a big growing market that for every idea now, every product idea, there's going to be competitors. What were you looking at? What were the kind of like the gaps where you saw an opportunity?
So I think there were three main places I saw gaps I wanted to exploit. One was just in the marketing area. Having learned a lot in the inbound marketing space, I felt like I could really compete there. I felt like I could compete in a way that it would really be a differentiator for us, where we could really kind of dominate the competition. I also saw a lot of people doing more kind of 9 to 5, Monday through Friday work. And I thought that's a great place to have an advantage. Let's, go with a remote team. Let's hire people from different time zones and let's do 24/7 support. if someone emails us at 10 p.m. on a Friday, I don't want to be the company that's emailing back at 9:30 on a Monday when your website's been down all weekend. So I thought that was someplace I definitely wanted to.
Hey, I actually just kind of glossed over that, but it is like the first benefit that you list on the site, 24/7 website edits. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, maybe I need to make it a little more, stand out a little more on the website and make it a little bigger.
Yeah, no, I mean, I see it there, but like it's because I'm just thinking about it. Like when I have a code issue or something on my site, like yeah, I've got to like email support, and then it gets back to that impatience thing. Like yeah, I could wait for the thing to be resolved by tomorrow or the next day, but I don't want to. I want to get it done now.
Exactly. And we have plans that come with priority support. So if you're the kind of person that needs, edits done within hours, then that's the plan for you. The last piece that we kind of differentiate ourselves with is just our white label program. So instead of just working directly with customers, we actually work with agencies to help them sell care plans and provide ongoing support. And that comes with all sorts of stuff. We give them free ebooks so that they can, attract new clients. We give them a whole onboarding email sequence that they can send to their clients. We take an email address from them and actually help them do support. So we forward that into our help desk. So we're able to provide that support. Obviously, all emails with their signature and their logo on white label reports we send out every week. So that I think is a big area where there are a lot of design firms, marketing agencies out there that want to work with WordPress, but they have a bunch of client sites and they don't really know what to do with them. And this is just a really easy kind of plug and play solution for them.
Yeah. And you're really offering like a true white label experience where it looks and feels like it's coming from their website, their email address, their brand.
Yeah, exactly. And the best part about that for our agency partners is that, especially for the ones like, let's say, building websites, every 2, 3, 4 years, people are kind of looking for a website refresh. Who are the first people that who are the first partners are going to look for in terms of helping them with that? It's going to be the people who've been in touch with them and sending them reports about their website every month, who have done edits for their current website, really quickly and effectively. They're not going to have any doubts. Oh, this is the company I want to build my new website. Let's just pay them $15K to build a new website for us. That's kind of an easy way to stay in touch with your current clients, keep that relationship building going, but not having to dedicate any of the financial resources or time resources to actually providing that somewhat low, that work that can be kind of considered a low impact in terms of the bottom line of a lot of these agencies.
Yeah, exactly. When you think about, like you said, like not only there's like a little bit of recurring revenue or profit margin that they can make by white labeling your service on an ongoing basis, but keeping those relationships active and then having the repeat larger projects come up, that I could see that working out. But kind of going back to the very first, the early days of WP Buffs, like, was it you doing most of the work, or did you start hiring a team immediately? What did that look like?
So I definitely was hiring people immediately for help with the technical work. I knew that was not something that was in my skill set, and I wouldn't hire myself to do technical work for me. So I figured if I wouldn't do it, then our clients probably shouldn't have to even make that decision. So that was something that from the beginning, I was always looking for ways to bring people on board who were better at me than at this work, because I'm technical enough to be dangerous, but not enough to actually, be a technical buff. So that was something that very early we brought on help for.
So you just sought out like freelance WordPress web developers.
Yeah, it really started as bringing on people part-time, kind of on an hourly basis, and having them cover certain shifts of the day. And it was really kind of just me and a few freelancers doing the work, and that's what it felt like, and that is what it was. And as we've kind of matured as a company, as we've brought people on full time, we've just not only as a company matured, but our systems have matured, our processes have matured. And so the way we handle things now is it's kind of like, I think about working for WP Buffs as the feeling of it as you have all the benefits of being a freelancer in terms of a lot of the flexibility, in terms of vacation time, in terms of just kind of not necessarily having to work a 9-to-5 job, but working when the clients need us. But you also have all the advantages of working a full-time job. So you have, you're a salaried employee. You don't have to go out and look for new clients. All the work's there for you to do. You're able to help us build a business and really kind of feed off our culture. So to me, that's the kind of direction we eventually got to and are still obviously working towards every day. But we've definitely shifted more in that direction, and that's a huge change for us.
Yeah, I mean, I really, really relate to that. I literally just wrote an entire article all about this.
I got to read this for sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, like a better way to scale a team, especially if you're bootstrapping. But I think this applies to really any company. this idea that there are really, really talented, eager, motivated people out there who don't want full-time jobs. They want to stay freelance. They like that flexibility. A lot of them are like stay-at-home parents. A lot of them are just working on other freelance projects, or they're side hustling a business of their own. So they want that freelance lifestyle, and they're super talented and motivated to do that sort of thing. But at the same time, that freelancing thing comes with a number of trade-offs, right? So like most freelance gigs come and go, and you have that, those peaks and valleys, the feast and famine. You don't have that steady retainer. A lot of times you're working alone, so you're kind of solo. You don't have a team to kind of collaborate with. And so when there's a business like a WP Buffs or like an Audience Ops that comes along and kind of helps fill those gaps for freelancers to say, hey, you could still be a freelancer, but here's something a lot more steady, long term. We've got a great team. We've got a Slack. We're just handing you clients to work on. You get to do really quality, meaningful work with a proven process and system. Just do your thing. I mean, most of my team has been on the team in that capacity for over 2 years, some of them over 3 years. And it's been a really solid, it's kind of like a win-win thing for everyone.
Yeah. I mean, man, you nailed it exactly just now. And especially as you're bootstrapping a business, I mean, every dime you spend is huge, has huge implications for your business. And, if you're going to start a business and bootstrap it, and you're just going to like hire 3 people full time when you start, you better like have a pretty big goose egg to have a little bit of runway in your business, or you better be funded. Like you better have raised some money. And if you haven't done either of those things, I think it's much safer and a much better bet to go the route of hiring part-time people. There are a few disadvantages to it, but the trade-off in terms of scaling up slowly and improving the concepts and keeping everybody kind of at this low risk point is, to me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, I would give that advice to almost anybody who's bootstrapping a business. Start with people part-time, and if you want to down the line, you can always bring them on full-time, and you can change your model later on. But to start, it's just, to me, it makes much more sense, and potentially on an ongoing basis as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And they can ramp up slowly or ramp down as the business needs. And the other thing about this is that by going the part-time freelancer route rather than trying to just immediately jump full-time salary employees, is that you can get such a higher level of talent. Like I wouldn't be able to afford a lot of our team out on a full-time salary, but I get this really high level talent for 10 to 15 hours of their week every week, and then you can start to really optimize the process of how you deliver the work and make it profitable while retaining that really high quality, high caliber team and final product.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah. So like early on, like first year of WP Buffs, like what were some of the key lessons and things that you learned or changes that you made to the operations and whatnot to make the team work and finding the right people and that sort of stuff?
So I think a big piece was WP Buffs was in its early stages. I was hiring people more for their technical ability than for whether or not they would be a good fit to work with the kind of culture I wanted to build at WP Buffs. I was always pretty good with the marketing side of things. So I was bringing on clients, and I just kind of needed people who could do the technical work. So that's what I did. I just kind of hired people pretty quickly and brought them on board, onboarded them, did all that. But they had some of the technical ability to do the work, but not as much, in terms of the kind of communication style I wanted, and just the kind of we've got your back feeling. That became so much more important as we went from, 2 people to 5 people to now 9 people. And so that was I think a mistake I made early in terms of hiring, and something I've had to correct as we've gone along. I've had to let go of a few developers who just didn't fit the mold as well. But once I brought on people who I was much more comfortable with, who I trusted much more in terms of wanting to really be part of this company and build a company with me, it really kind of went from night to day. And we have a really, you can feel when we get this change in the company where it's not just me driving the culture, it's everybody is driving the culture, and it's kind of turning into its own animal in a good way. And so I can tell it's kind of working, and that's again been something that's been a huge change for us in a positive way.
That's something that's really on my mind a lot. It always has been since I've been growing the team on Audience Ops, about culture, and because we are all remote. Frankly, we just have too many people in too distant places for us to do any sort of like in-person, retreats or things like that. So I'm curious, like, what kinds of things do you do to keep the team, really cohesive and the culture, positive and everything?
So this is something I'm constantly working on, constantly trying to find better ways to do it, because this is probably one of, if not the hardest piece of running a remote team, is really making it feel like a team. Because it's when you see someone in person every day, it is different. You get to read their body language. You get to really kind of see them emote, and you see the emotions behind what they're saying, and that makes a huge difference. So we do a few things. We have just kind of our Monday stand-up where everyone's on the call. We just talk about things we did last week, tasks we have for this week, and any blockers people have. But one thing we've added to that is once we're done with the that business side of things, we actually keep that video call open. So we don't, not necessarily to go over more things, just to kind of work together via video. And that's been a really cool addition to what we do. It's actually a suggestion someone at MicroConf gave to me.
So you just have this like call running, but you guys aren't necessarily like talking. You're just kind of sitting there working. And
yeah, sometimes. And sometimes someone brings something up, or someone sends a piece of music and then we're all listening to it. Or sometimes we're just talking about non-work stuff. But it's cool it really feels like you're just working next to someone, like it's kind of an office. And that's been a really cool way to influence a little bit of more serendipity into our calls. Because, as you know, as a remote team, when you get on a call, it's like, what are we talking about? Like, what are the business goals? Like, let's solve it. Okay, call over. And you don't have as much time for just like bumping into each other at the water cooler and rubbing elbows and just kind of like talking about the like real humanity stuff.
Yeah.
That may not be work related.
I struggle a little bit with calls. Like, part of it is because like I just want to have as few recurring meetings on my calendar as possible.
Totally.
But I do have one meeting with just the managers, and it's like every 2 weeks, and it lasts like 5-10 minutes. And then occasionally one-on-ones with people as different things come up. But almost all of our team interaction happens in Slack. And I would like to have more FaceTime, more calls. A while back, like early in Audience Ops, I tried doing like kind of like the stand-up call once a week with the whole team. And one thing that I found as a productized service, like I think stand-up, maybe you have different thoughts on this, but like I think that the weekly stand-up has more impact when you're like a SaaS or a software product, like when you're building new features every week. Together, you're collaborating on what the next big release is going to be and how that's coming together. Whereas what I found with the productized service, what we do is so routine. We're just running the production line every week, and we've got all these clients, and we're doing the deliverables, we're following our processes, and so the stuff that we would talk about at a stand-up is just super routine and kind of repetitive, and most of that is documented in our Trello boards and whatnot. Anyway, so I pretty early on I killed the stand-up. We kind of replaced it with the managers meeting, which kind of gives an update on any issues, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, like as a productized service.
No, I think that you're actually extremely spot on this. The advantage I see in the stand-up is honestly not as much, because you're right. For like a SaaS company, it's kind of like you're going through sprints. So the stand-up is really like related to like really the specific tasks you're doing this week. Whereas what we're doing, it really is pre-systematized, and you're really just kind of like knocking out tasks to say, come up, and it doesn't get that much more complex than that. But that being said, the advantage I see is I want kind of everyone to have an idea of things that are going on in every part of the business. So like before we were doing these calls, like no one like really knew about marketing. We just kind of like magically got new clients, and like that's what they thought it like happened, right? Because they just didn't have that context. So, when I get to do my stand-up call, I get to tell them about the marketing stuff we did last week. And, hey, I was on this podcast last week, like here, check it out. And that way I feel like people get a more holistic idea that they're not just technical buffs. They're not just people who are like helping out with customer tickets and like that's the extent of what they do. It's like, well, actually, we actually do all of this together. Like I'm doing like most of the marketing and like a lot of the sales, but then you come in and help out with this, and people get to see that entire life cycle. And so that's where I see some of the advantages of doing the Monday kind of call, just so that someone who may not know anything about another piece of the business gets to hear about what's going on there.
Yeah, that's a good tip. I like that.
And so that does have a little bit of an advantage there, I think.
Cool. Yeah, one of the little things that we do in our Slack is in the random channel every Friday, but sometimes just whenever, somebody will just throw out like a random question, like a Friday random question where it's just like,
nice.
Like, what's everyone's, vacation plans this week, or your favorite vacation destination, or, books you're currently reading and stuff like that. And like, that just gets the whole team talking about like just random stuff. And the other thing kind of related to that is, especially when we bring on new team members, we have them introduce themselves, but we also have the entire team kind of reintroduce themselves and try to include something that maybe you haven't talked about publicly before in the team. So like, Yeah, like a lot of our members have been on the team for like over 2 years, some 3 years. And to even hear them reintroduce themselves and talk about some other aspect of what's going on in their life, it's kind of like a cool thing for everyone to read through and just like, in the Slack random channel, it does kind of bring people together a little bit.
Yeah, definitely agree. Those kind of conversations and random questions coming in definitely has a nice positive effect in that arena. Ours is kind of more, ours is music related. A lot of people like to listen to certain music while they work. And so I've gotten a lot of awesome music suggestions from people who are like, hey, check out this like lo-fi live YouTube station. And I go on, I'm like, this is perfect. Like I work to this every day.
Sweet.
And that has a nice connection for sure.
Awesome. So, before we wrap up here, I am kind of curious about the marketing stuff. I know you've been focused on that. What's been working really well for you in the early days to get those? I'm curious about like getting those first customers, like your first batch of customers, and then what's been like really sustainable to drive traffic and leads and customers.
So most of our approach in terms of marketing has been through inbound marketing. So writing a lot of high quality content, having it get found, search engines, mainly Google really, and then trying to convert those people into email subscribers. Once we've done that, we kind of segment them into different lists, depending on whether they're an agency or freelancer, or maybe they're just a direct customer, and kind of sending them some more value in terms of what they do, and then eventually kind of educating them about what we do. And that's really been our main strategy from day one.
Yeah, I've been checking out the blog a little bit. The content on the blog is very in-depth, very well done. I could see that's a pretty key component to all of your marketing here. And you got some like free ebooks and things like that. So
yeah, that's been pretty effective for us so far. Although I'm really at the point now where I would like to, and I'm looking to accelerate growth a little bit. We probably bring on a new customer about one every 2 days. So we have about 15 new customers we bring on a month right now. 15 new websites I manage. And I'd like to really make that one a day. So I'm really looking for other ways, maybe some paid advertising. Maybe that's an area I want to dive into. Maybe doing some more social stuff, maybe some AdWords. I'm not sure, but maybe it's just accelerating what we're already doing. But that's definitely something I'm looking to do in the next, few months here.
Awesome. So yeah, aside from kind of, stepping on the gas when it comes to marketing, as we start to wrap up here, what else do you have planned ahead in this year, 2018, and going into next year, like other big plans for WP Buffs or anything else?
So we have some goals that we wanted to hit this year. We wanted to get to 600 websites managed. And we also wanted to get to 96% customer happiness rating, just our internal desk metrics. We were at 92 last year. And as of right now, we're definitely on target to hit 96% customer happiness, which would be great.
How are you measuring that?
So that's just people who leave ratings in our desk system. So it's when we send a solved message, people get an email, they can choose, how this ticket went for them. And so we just want to get that rating up a little bit.
I always get that email after customer support, and I always ignore it.
A lot of people do. But we have a few ways. We tell people if they give us ratings, like we'll send them, a Bufftastics t-shirt, which we do, which people kind of like. So we have kind of ways that we get people to fill that out. Although, to tell you the truth, after attending MicroConf, I've kind of changed the way I want to kind of do our goals moving forward this year. Although those things are important, and I'm probably going to keep them in place. The two things I really do want to focus on moving forward are increasing the customer lifetime value and decreasing our churn rate. To me, those are a high ratio of LTV to churn is a sign of a really successful business in terms of the SaaS pricing model. So, and that's what I saw a lot at MicroConf. So I'm really focusing on ways that we can directly and indirectly affect both of those things. So that's what I really have my mind on moving forward as well.
Yeah, I like that. I think this year for me, I've gotten away from the big metric-based goals, like trying to hit a certain revenue target or customer target, and because those are, I can work on things, but the actual numbers are sometimes out of my control. And then the other thing I've gotten away from is planning too many big things too far out in the year. Like I every January I always plan in quarter one I'm going to do this, and by quarter three we're going to be doing this, and by quarter four we're going to be launching this, and it's just way too far out. And now I'm just thinking much more in terms of like the next 3 months and where I want to focus my time, and then I'll just take it from there.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. I think we're doing something similar, so we're on the same wavelength.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, I think we already covered a lot of ground here. WPBuffs.com is the site. Anywhere else where people can connect with you, Joe?
People can feel free to check us out on Twitter, @WPBuffs. If you want to find me on Twitter, I'm just Joseph H. Howard. If you check out WP Buffs and scroll to the footer there, we also have a new Instagram page we're kind of featuring the people on our team. Again, we're all remote, so hashtag remote work is a big thing for us. We just kind of want to showcase what it's like to work for the company and kind of give people just kind of a peek into that fourth window. So feel free to check us out on the gram as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm going to check that out. Awesome, Joe. Yeah, great to catch up with you. Thanks for doing it.
Hey, you too, Brian. Nice talking to you.
All right. All right, now before we wrap up, let me ask you, what'd you think of this one? Was it good? You learned something? Are there any other topics you'd like to hear me cover on this pod? Well, let me know. No, I mean really, let me know. Hit reply on any of the emails that I sent you. I'll read every single one. I try to reply to everyone. What's that? Oh, you're not on my list yet. Okay, well, head over to my site, productizepodcast.com. You can get on my email newsletter that way. I'll send you, new episodes and all the show notes, but I'll also send you my newsletter where I share all sorts of articles and other insights on entrepreneurship, building products, productized services, software, SaaS, and other cool stuff there. So yeah, check that out over at productizepodcast.com. And of course, if you have a minute, I'd really appreciate it if you could head over to iTunes, leave a 5-star review, or at least just 5 stars. You don't even have to leave a review if you don't want to, but that would really go a long way to helping other folks like us find this podcast. So yeah, thanks a lot for tuning in. I'll talk to you on the next one.